Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming. And thanks again to FOW for hosting this. So yes, tonight we're going to talk about the Horseshoe Trail, a very interesting but rather obscure long distance trail in southeastern Pennsylvania. And it's my intent to give you an overview of the areas that this trail traverses and a little background on the trail. And through pictures, I hope to give you a visual sense of the pastoral and historical character of this trail, as well as the points of interest. We'll talk a little bit about logistics and why I chose to hike this trail and how I hiked it. So if you have any questions, no, I'm going to leave it up to you. People can put them in the chat. And if you feel that it's a question that I should address right away, I don't mind if you stop me. Otherwise, we can wait till the end. So, you know, whatever you guys want to do, I'm fine either way. So I am going to share my screen and we will get started. Okay. All right. Okay, so let me go back a slide here. Uh-oh. Hang on, folks. Let me stop sharing for 1 second and reshare because that was not the beginning. There we go. Okay, here we are. All right, so welcome to hiking the Horseshoe Trail. As Noah had mentioned, this is a 140-mile trail through southeastern Pennsylvania. And this is the logo of the Horseshoe Trail. And to give you an idea of where we're going. Whoops. All right, let's go back. All right, so here I wanted to put up a little map so you could actually see where this trail actually goes. It starts in Valley Forge National Park. That's the eastern terminus. And it's right where Chester County and Montgomery County meet. And I think that intersection is like 23 and 252 or 352 or something. There's a marker there, and that is the official eastern terminus of the trail. From there it goes through Chester County, and then into Berks, Lancaster, Lebanon, and once it gets to Lebanon County, it starts to trend north through Dauphin County, where it meets its western terminus at the Appalachian Trail on Stony Mountain, just north of Hershey, Harrisburg area. So another reference is if you were driving west on the turnpike, like from Valley Forge, and you were driving west headed towards Harrisburg, and you look to your right and you see those rolling ridge lines and just kind of hills and off to the right there, that's actually where the Horseshoe Trail is. At certain points, as you can see from the map, you're actually pretty close to the turnpike, and then other parts it kind of veers away. But so that's where it is as far as maps go in the state of Pennsylvania. So next slide. So it was established in 1935. So it's been around for a long time, and it's maintained by the Horseshoe Trail Conservancy. The idea for this trail was conceived by a man named Henry Woolman. And Henry was an avid horseman, and he had ridden part of the Appalachian Trail through the great the Smoky Mountain National Park there. And he decided that Pennsylvania was equally as scenic and that it should have its own trail. So the idea was that this trail was going to connect Philadelphia with the Appalachian Trail. In 1947, it was actually plotted on maps, and it remains today a multi-use trail, mostly a hiking and equestrian trail. There are other activities you might, you'll see joggers, I've seen dog trainers, not too much cycling, some parts, especially the part that's designated as a national recreation trail. There's a 17-mile section. You'll see a lot of different uses of this trail, but mostly a hiking and equestrian trail. The trail runs through private land holdings, private properties, farmlands, county and state parks, national historic parks, and state game lands. So there's a variety of landscapes that you pass through. The terrain itself can be wooded and forested. You have those rolling hills and ridge lines, mountains, wetlands, riparian areas, meadows, farmlands, and sometimes, you know, you're walking through neighborhoods on a sidewalk. So it changes its space a lot. Some of the actual surfaces could be forest roads. We call those troads because they're kind of a trail, but they're kind of a road. And you could have paved roads, rail to trail paths, sidewalks, crop fields. I have found myself in more than one cornfield and a turnip field. There's mowed paths and single track footpaths. So the variety that this trail offers is pretty interesting. Now, the trail itself is closely related to the development of the iron industry, excuse me, and many of the trails connecting forges and furnaces in that area became parts of the Horseshoe Trail. So when you take a look at that area, everything needed for the iron industry to be successful was there. You have the low mountains and rock outcroppings that are presenting iron ore that could be mined. The underlying geology has a lot of limestone in it, so lime itself is used as a flux for that process. You have plenty of charcoal that could be created from the endless trees that, you know, were there at that time. And then you have a lot of creeks, so the water could turn the blast furnaces. The trail does pass by or near many furnaces and forges. You can actually see them. And the other characteristic of this area that I really want you to, you know, take away from this presentation, and if you've traveled in that area, you know that is where our iconic farmlands are. And again, that's due to the underlying geology. There's a lot of sedimentary rock that's putting kind of clay and mud and limestone, providing the lime. So you get a very fertile soil that made, you know, farming a no-brainer in that area. So now we're going to talk. So that's a little bit about the trail and what the tread looks like. You'll see the picture I have here. It's yellow blazed. And then whenever there was a road crossing, you'd actually have those signs those posts that you see there. So the pictures you're looking at here, the one on the top left is the eastern terminus trail marker. This is the one that's in Valley Forge. It was erected in 1972, and I don't know if you can see it, but it says that it's only 121 miles. Well, since then, more miles have been added to the trail. The one on the right is the marker at the western terminus where the trail intersects with the Appalachian Trail. So why did I pick this trail? Let me tell you how I found out about the trail first. When I moved back to Philadelphia in 2016, I had purchased a book called Backpacking Pennsylvania, 37 Hikes. And it was written by Jeff Mitchell. And he had a section where he wrote about the Horseshoe Trail, and he called it an endangered trail. And now that I've hiked the trail, I think I know what he means, because what has happened when this trail, now remember, this trail started, its inception was 1935. So over time, development, whether it's farms or residential areas, a lot of development and sale of land move that trail out of the woods and onto the roads. So there is quite a bit of road walking on this trail. So I think that may be what he meant by that, but I can tell you that the Horseshoe Trail Conservancy is a very active group. They're devoted folks, and they do a really good job maintaining this trail. And the fact that some of the trail, has to be on the roads, well, that's just part of the experience. That's kind of how I look at it. So in 2019, I decided to go camping in the winter, and I drove out to French Creek State Park, which is one of the few state parks that stays open in the winter. And I found this yellow blaze trail, and I was like, oh, this is the Horseshoe Trail that I had read about. So I hiked the whole section, like that section of the Horseshoe Trail that goes through French Creek. I hiked that entire area, and I thought, okay, that's nice. Maybe I'll come back to it. And then the following year, 2020, well, we all know what happened in 2020. It seemed like the only thing I could do was hike. So I had driven out to Lebanon County and did a little section of the Horseshoe Trail in one of the state game lands. And that was the day that I decided, you know what, this is going to be a COVID project. I had just finished a COVID project prior to that. I finished the Standing Stone Trail. So I thought, okay, well, this is my next project. And so from August to May, I was getting out there a couple times a month and doing it as day hikes. So I would go out, I would park my car, I would hike X amount of miles and then hike back. So I kind of joke around, it's like I hiked the trail, I hiked the trail twice by this out and back. I did it by myself pretty much the entire time. There was there was a 3-mile section and a 4-mile section that I brought my boyfriend with me, and he hiked with me. But the majority of the trail I did by myself. I did as day hikes. And I only overnighted that one time that I spoke of in French Creek. And then finally, when I did the last section where it meets the Appalachian Trail, there was a campsite very close to the terminus, and I spent a night there. But pretty much just driving out and getting out of the house before sunrise and getting there and hitting the trail early. And I would hike excuse me, I would hike anywhere from like maybe 8 to 16 miles, depending on the section that I felt that I was able to do. But that was pretty much 8 to 16 miles. I'd pack a lunch and bring a camera, in a few minutes, I'm going to talk about a lot of the things that are around the trail, but because of COVID, those things were closed. So it really just became about walking the trail and doing the miles. So once I decided that this was going to be a COVID project, I went ahead and I joined the Horseshoe Trail Conservancy, and I purchased the guidebook and the set of maps. Now, I read a lot of guidebooks, and I have to say that these people really got it right with the way they did this. So like any guidebook, you have the history of the trail and hiking protocol and an overview of the different areas that it goes through. And then they, by map, against 10 maps, per map, they explain where all the access is, meaning where you can park. Now, this is important for a couple different reasons. People that are riding this trail with their horses, they need to know where they can bring a horse trailer. So it's very clear on the map and in the guidebook where you can park. And then once it goes through by map, where all the parking access is, then it goes into points of interest. Again, by county, by map, all very clearly written, and then after points of interest. And when I say points of interest, I mean these are things that are either right on the trail or a distance off the trail. You might have to drive to it, or maybe you can hike to it. After they talk about points of interest, then it goes into camping and lodging. Again, there's only a couple places that you actually really can camp there. It does go through a campground at one point, and then there's campgrounds and hotels near there. And finally, it ends up with groceries in case you needed to resupply or groceries. It tells you where everything is. So the reason why I'm bringing this all up is because what I have found a lot of time with guidebooks is you'll be coming up to a junction and it'll say, you know, it'll describe a trail junction, and then that'll launch into this like paragraphs of history and all other kind of things. And you're thinking, I just want to know if I'm supposed to go right or left here. So they take all of that and they leave that in the guidebook. And what they do on the map is just give you a trail description. And if it has anything, if there is something, if there's a point of interest or access or camping or groceries, it just has that in parentheses, and then you can go in the book and find out about it. The map gives you a kind of a pictorial of what that particular segment is, where it starts and ends, townships and counties that you're passing through. Not a lot of topo detail on the map, but you really don't need it because the trail description is pretty good. And what I like about these maps is it shows you everything that's around. So if you needed to know where that campsite is, or you wanted to know where a historical maybe a forge or a preserve is, it's on the map. And then you can see the highways and the roads as well. So again, these folks got it right. They really did. So the next thing we want to talk about is I'm going to take you through now just some of the points of interest, and we'll do it by county. So here is Chester County, and this is your first three maps. Obviously, probably everybody's pretty familiar with Valley Forge. And if you've been to Valley Forge, and if you've ever hiked the Mount Misery, Mount Joy loop, you have probably walked right by this. This is the ruins of an old bottling plant. Now, what's interesting about this plant, it just was for bottled water. There's a beautiful, really abundant spring that's inside those ruins. You can actually walk up to it and go inside. This was a bottling plant. They sold bottled water, and the person who owned it sold it to, I don't know if it's Robert Hires of Hires Root Beer. Then he took that over. It still remained just bottled water, but it was run by the Hires of Hires Root Beer. So other things that you will see as you make your way through Chester County are some of the things I've listed here. This is by no means complete, but it is a lot of them. Definitely some of these ones that I would like to go back to, especially the Esherick Museum, which Esherick was a woodworker and an artist, and he has this museum of all his work, and I think he actually resided here at one point. There's little historic towns. Yellow Springs looks like a nice place to maybe walk around. The Welkenweir Nature Preserve is actually just 0.4 miles off the Horseshoe Trail. I did not go there, but it's easily accessible through a side trail off the Horseshoe Trail. And then St. Peter's Village is another one of those little historic towns. There's also a connection to the Brandywine and Mason-Dixon trails, which are two other long distance trails that can be followed in southeastern Pennsylvania. So from here, we're going to move into Berks County, and this is maps 3 to 5. And here we went through Hopewell. You go through Hopewell Furnace National Historic Site. And this is from here, right beyond here is French Creek. And then more countless forges and furnaces. Now this one, if you don't know about the forge and furnace industry, this one has signs and explanations and old ruins, and it's very educational. This land is also within what the area they call the Hopewell Big Woods. And the Hopewell Big Woods is this area and the surrounding area that is the largest unbroken tract of forested land in southeastern Pennsylvania. So from Berks, we get into Lancaster County. So Lancaster County, you go actually right through the Middle Creek Wildlife Management Area, where the snow geese have that big migration. You actually walk right by there. This looks like a really interesting area because there's so many other trails. You could actually, make nice loops. You could visit the visitor center there. The trail also goes through a petting zoo, and that's what this picture is. You cross a road and you're in a petting zoo. And again, more farmlands, forges and furnaces. But this was a nice little section through here. And the town of Ephrata is not too far from there. You would probably about 8 miles. You need to drive there, but you could definitely visit the cloister. Now we're in Lebanon County, and this is maps 7 and 8. And my two favorite things here were the Governor Dick Park and the observation tower. And it's a little side trail to get to this observation tower. I did do it. I did climb up all the ladders and get to the top, and it's a 360 view of the farmlands in Berks. And then Dinosaur Rock was an interesting little exposure. That's another side trail off the Horseshoe Trail. It's a big exposure of diabase that looks like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, which is pretty cool. And then these other places, again, they weren't open because of COVID, but it would be a good time to return to see those areas. And then we get into Dauphin County. And here, basically, you're walking through Hershey. There was one point where I had come out of the woods and I was walking, it was a road walk, and the houses, like, they look like houses, but they weren't really houses. And I wasn't quite sure if I was in some like retreat place. I really didn't know where I was till I missed a turn. And I was sitting on the curb trying to figure out, I kind of had an idea where I went wrong, but a lady was jogging by and she asked me if I needed any help. And it turns out she's a house mother. And I was walking through the Hershey School, and this was like their boarding area. And the Hershey School, if you're not familiar with it, is a school that accepts children from low-income families. And it was a beautiful property. You also go right by Hershey Cemetery, and you know, you got to give a nod to Milton Hershey there for the chocolate. And then the Hershey Park is not far from there either. And here's some other things. Now, once you get here to this map, the trail has really changed. And if you remember, I explained to you earlier all the different kinds of terrain that you go through. And you could be walking on a ridgeline and then down a road and across a creek, and then you're going up the driveway behind somebody's house. And that's another takeaway. This trail always is changing, and it always there's surprises along the way. So once you get to map 10, you can tell that you're getting out of, I didn't mention this earlier, but the trail goes through, the physiographic region that the trail goes through is called the Piedmont. So the Piedmont has all the farms. As the further along you get, you start to notice that the rocks are changing, the soil is changing, and you can actually kind of see the transition from the Piedmont. Once you get to the Appalachian Mountains, you're now in the Ridge and Valley. So if you're into that kind of thing, it's definitely, you know, observations you can make along the way. So I'm going to now just show you some pictures. We've gone over the points of interest. Now we're going to just look at a couple pictures from each section. And Chester County, Montgomery County, like the first map, once you got out of Valley Forge, there was a bit of road walking. But it was areas like this, not a lot of traffic. You're starting to see a lot of farmlands. This picture on the left, right across the street, I know there was there was like a little historical museum that unfortunately was closed, but I sat there and had lunch, and it was a real, you know, very pleasant walk. And then map 2, you're, you know, into Chester County. This picture on the left was a cold cellar, and there was a little sign there. Apparently there was a really, really big farmhouse that was on the lawn behind this, and this is the only structure that remains from that, and it gives you the date and the time of when this was in existence. The creek, this is probably, I don't remember the name of this creek, but this was probably the only wet crossing. Most of the streams you cross, you know, you can just, there's either bridges or there's not much to them. But this wet crossing, if that water was any higher, it would probably be a little hard to get across, but it was low water at the time that I went there. And this is right before you get into Warwick County Park. So continuing through Chester and into Berks County, the trail is wooded. There is a several mile section where it was a railroad at one time, and it was a Natural Lands Conservancy, I guess, took it over, and it's now a rail trail. And this rock was something that you'll see as you walk by. And that was a very pleasant walk as well. Map 4, you're still in Berks County, passing lots of little historical buildings. And this was an old Quaker house and nice quiet roads. And one of the things too, because I did this from August to May, I did get to see the trail in different seasons. So fall was really pretty. And here we are making the transition in map 5 from Berks to Lancaster County. And I would say that this picture on the left, if there is one picture that could pretty much sum up the rolling farmlands, it would, and the views that you see, it would be this picture. And then the picture on the right, remember I told you every now and then the trail just has these oddities, and this is one of them. This is, they called it the sanctuary, and there's little benches that looks like a little altar there. And I stopped there and had lunch and contemplated life, I guess. From here, map 6. now Matt, look, I know this picture has some explanation, and I will explain myself. Map 6, I think I had 2 favorite sections, map 6 and map 10. But map 6, the picture on the left is little exposure they call Mushroom Rock. And this was a beautiful walk through a forest, and it kind of, I think this is called Cannon Hill, and you could look out, because the leaves were off, you could look out and see lots of views of the ridge lines to the south. Now the picture on the right, again, I was just, you're walking along in the forest, and you're on private property a lot. I think I mentioned that earlier. So you never know what you're going to see. And when I came upon this, I immediately thought I was in like an 80s horror film. There's this busted up trailer, and there's hooks hanging from the rafters. And then there's this machine. And I can't even imagine what that machine was, but I just found this very amusing. Not long after I saw this, I was through the woods, back on the road, and there was this like 15-foot wooden carving of Jesus. And and it was like beautiful. I mean, there was just some of the things that people have in their yards are very interesting. So now we're in map 7, and this was the one time I did hike in the snow. This is the Colonel Shock Memorial Park where the observation tower is, and I crunched through 6 inches of snow that day. But that was a nice walk. And then because I didn't have any rickety wooden bridges, I figured, I should stick one of those in there. And you could see the yellow blaze on the trail, and this trail is blazed really well. These folks do a great job. There was only maybe 1 or 2 places that I could think of where the blazes were a little faint. Usually there was only one time I got lost, and that was a cornfield. And come out of the woods, and you're in this cornfield, and it had been harvested, so it wasn't like I didn't have visibility, but you were told to diagonally cross, and I think it was actually in this map, I think it was this section, diagonally cross the field. And then I guess I didn't diagonally cross the field on enough of a diagonal, and I ended up on this other road, and eventually found my way back, because you just look at the GPS on my phone and I could see where I was. You have signal the entire time on this trail, so it wasn't like you're in the middle of nowhere. I wouldn't say this trail is remote. Maybe section map 10 is, but not I wouldn't say the rest of it is remote. Now this is this one on the left. This is on the Hershey property. This was just a farmhouse. Where I took this picture was a little playground, and it was in a neighborhood, a residential area beyond this, and I stopped there for lunch. And this picture on the right was a state game land, and there were a lot of little frogs and a lot of wildlife present on that day. And here we get to map 9, and you see a lot of animals. This was a little alpaca farm, the picture on the right, and this is the picture on the left was a family cemetery, the Ball family. I don't even know if I'm pronouncing that right, but there were some old, really old, like early 18th century gravestones in here. So that is obviously a very old family in that area. And then finally we get to map 10, and map 10 starts in the Fort Indiantown Gap military reservation. So this is actually one of those private, land holdings that the trail passes through. And I would say once you get into map 10, that's probably where your steepest inclines and descents are. And then if you've done any hiking in Pennsylvania, the picture on the right should look very familiar, because that's a lot of what the Appalachian Trail looks like. And I remember that day, it snowed on me that day, and but it was a great hike. And I think, and I look at a picture like this, and I think about the different terrains and landscapes that you pass through, again, just owing to the variety of landscapes that this trail offers. So my sources, did I get back? Okay, my sources were, I did keep a journal. Now I didn't read much of my journal to you this evening, because I'm kind of hot and cold on the journaling thing. Early on, I was making entries like parked car at Chantilly Lane, hiked west to Route 100 and back. Oh, wow, that's really informative. But the more I got into the trail, And then by the end, I was writing like paragraphs about invasive species and people I saw, and the landscapes and animals that I saw. I definitely got into it as I went along. The Horseshoe Trail Conservancy website, I did pull some information from there, and the maps, and as I mentioned, this book, Backpacking Pennsylvania by Jeff Mitchell, was the first time I ever heard of the trail. And Wikipedia, who doesn't use Wikipedia? But there's a little friend that I made in one part, and the picture on the right, this was the day I decided that this was a COVID project, when I was walking this trail and in this area. That's when I said, okay, I'm definitely going to make this a COVID project. And I'd like to leave you with some contact information for the Horseshoe Trail Conservancy. And as someone who avidly hikes and backpacks, I do try to support a lot of these trail clubs with memberships, and they're all doing great work out there, and all of it by volunteers. So if you are involved with Friends of the Wissahickon as a volunteer, you understand the commitment that takes, and so all these trail clubs in Pennsylvania, they're all out there doing great work. They have a website. There's the email for information if you'd like. They do have a Facebook page, and they also have a Facebook group page where the exchanges there are really more, related to the actual hike itself. People looking for information. So that's what I have for you this evening, and I want to thank you all for coming. I'm going to stop my share. And we're back. And if anybody has any questions, I'm happy to answer. Oh, thank you, Noah. I see what you did there. Thank you. Good deal. And I want to see everybody. There we go.
Hey folks, so if you have any questions, drop them in the chat.
Or you can take yourself off mute. There's not that many of us.
Wow.
So I don't have a question, but that was really great. And I just wanted to make a comment that I was so happy to see the bottling plant in your pictures at Valley Forge, because my husband is the great grandson of Benjamin Franklin, who
first had it.
Bottling plant.
Yes, he was the first owner of that.
Yes, he was, and he left it to his heirs, and his heirs sold it to Charles Hires.
Charles Hires, okay.
Yes.
Yeah,
So,
thank you for that.
Oh
awesome.
My gosh, no, thank you. And we are hiking the trail. We just started, a friend of mine, Marge, who's on here, and we're on map 1, but we're going to be hiking the whole trail. So this was really timely, and now we're super excited. So
nice. Yeah. Well, very good. Well, I hope you enjoy it. Are you guys shuttling? Like, how are you doing it? Are you taking 2 cars and
yeah,
going?
So we both drive, and we meet at the end point, and then we hop in the other car and drive to the beginning point, and kind of plot it out that way. And so we're just trying to figure out, using the maps. We have the 10 maps, and, trying to figure out where to park, and so that we can make that work. So
nice.
But thank you. Oh,
my pleasure. Thank you. I knew it was Benjamin Franklin something, but I couldn't remember what the last name is. And I knew Hires wasn't the original owner.
Yeah. He's quite a character. If you need any information, let me know.
Okay.
Okay. Hi, my name is Melanie. Is it okay to make a comment?
Yes, Melanie,
great.
Please.
I'm really glad that I made it into the Zoom this evening. I have to admit, I thought we were going on a hike, and I was really bummed out when I heard it was a Zoom. I'm like, oh no, not another Zoom link. But I am so glad. I'm so glad I did this, because I have the maps here with me. I don't know if you're sitting there. I was working as a caregiver in the Adamstown area, and the caretaker of the property introduced me to the hiking club. And so I have all the information on the Horseshoe Trail from their club. And I agree, they have more organized, complete information, because the part of the trail out there was built entirely up on. So I did a mile of it without having the maps, and it was very overgrown. And then I wound up on private property. And so it was explained to me that it was actually 222 going through there that changed that section. Oh, I know where you were.
Yeah, I remember.
Okay. So it was a really awkward place to just, land and start. I'm really grateful for having the maps. I'm really grateful for your discussion, because I'm going to go out to Hopewell Furnace and pick it up from the French Creek area.
Yeah, that's exactly a nice area. That is. Very little road walking in that section. It's pretty forested. Again, you're in that Hopewell Big Woods area, so
which is amazing. Yeah.
And then right where you were, did you go there? I had a picture of this, but it was one of those things that kind of had to call some things. I just couldn't show everything, but there is right after you pass 222, there is an old stagecoach shop stop, old stagecoach stop, because there's a spring there. And
yes,
yeah,
I was right up the hill from that.
Yeah, there were
That's
two,
exactly where it was.
two roads, two old Indian paths that came together at this spring, and that they actually used that to build the road from like Reading to Harrisburg, or Reading to,
Makes total sense.
yeah. And there's a big sign says water, and you know.
Yes, that is exactly where I was, right
Yeah.
up the steepest part of Lancaster Avenue from that. I believe
Yeah.
it's called like Lancaster Avenue. But right up the hill and into the woods from there.
Yeah, and then that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And so having the local history shared with me from somebody in their 90s, and then getting the maps and getting the book. And you know, when I got them, I sat down with her and went through them, and she was giving some perspective from what things were like, you know, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago.
Yeah.
So your talk was incredibly helpful for me to put it in the
Good.
right here, right now.
Good.
You seem like you're a very intermediate hiker though. Like, I don't know, like I will go out on like 10-mile hikes by myself in semi-unfamiliar areas, but to do this whole thing by yourself and to just go, like, how long have you been hiking that you had such a comfort point with doing that?
Always.
Okay.
Always.
Yeah.
I do a lot of backpacking solo. I do have a backpacking friend that I go with sometimes, but I do a lot of it by myself. But you know, I mean, I understand the risks of doing things like that, but there's always an itinerary left with someone, where my car is parked, you know. I mean, there's certain things.
A buddy system.
Yeah, or just like somebody knows where I'm at, and they know when I'm supposed to be back, and you know.
Are you going to lead any Friends of the Wissahickon hikes out on the Horseshoe Trail at all, in like this year?
I don't know that I would be doing that. I do actually occasionally lead hikes in the Wissahickon, but I don't know how that would work, you know, taking people out to the Horseshoe Trail, you know, under a FOW umbrella. I don't know how that would work, but
if you ever do anything, I would love to be on your mailing list if you
yeah,
had a contact list for, because just having a little bit of mentoring before going out on some of it would be helpful. So is it okay to just leave an email in the chat?
Yeah, you can do that.
Okay.
And also I would encourage you, are you on social media at all?
Some, yeah.
Okay, because they have a good Facebook group. Now, I'm not referring to their Facebook page, a Facebook group where people are actually exchanging hiking information, and that would
I'll look it up. Yeah.
Yeah. It's the, you know, the Horseshoe Trail Facebook group, and I think you'd find that a good resource, and people.
Okay, great.
People are very friendly and helpful.
Thank you so much.
So, Sarah, did you hear me? I talked about rocks.
Yes, and actually after you did the dinosaur rock, I got out my cell phone and I looked it up because I wanted to see a picture of it.
Yeah, you know, I should have left that picture in, but I did not. So.
And that was Diabase, yeah.
Diabase, yep.
Yeah.
So.
Can I ask a question on map 10? You said that's kind of probably the steepest ascent and descent. How steep is it?
Okay. Let's see.
Any idea? Like
okay, no, I'm good. I have something here that will help you.
Oh, cool.
Here's steep in capital letters. Does that help?
Give us an angle, you know.
You know, I'm thinking about elevation gain. Like, I'm thinking that's kind of what you're asking me.
Right.
Okay, here you go. The Stony Mountain summit is 1,656 feet.
Okay.
I would say from the start of that map, which kind of starts in a valley, Clark, it starts in a valley, and to end up at that elevation over the course of that 13-mile section, you're gaining 1,500 feet.
Okay.
Over 13 miles, but like there's just really, there's a rail trail section in there that's flat, but then there's a couple really good, like when you get to Second Mountain, you go up Second Mountain, down Second Mountain, and then up Stony Mountain, and those are your steepest inclines. You know, you might stop and rest a minute and get some water. I know I did. Yeah, I know.
Oh, you know what is Stony Mountain by Maidens Creek?
Stony Mountain is by, believe it or not, Stony Creek. Yeah, that was the last water source. Because there was really no water once you started going up, and because I was staying overnight, I was going to camp out, I had to make sure I got water, and at the base of it is Stony Creek, and that was the last water. Oh wait, there is a Rattling Run, but I don't remember, there was water in there. Yeah, but I don't see.
Oh,
I see Clark Creek, but that's on the other side of the ridge.
So this would be the start of the Appalachian Trail, then going up into, like, we were up at Maiden Creek would be up past Cabela's by Hamburg. So that would actually be
you're nowhere near. Yeah, you're
nowhere near this.
Nowhere near this.
It's the continuation of the Appalachian Trail.
Yeah, well, the Appalachian Trail traverses, like, that's a couple 100 miles. I did the Appalachian Trail in 2010.
Awesome.
And, I remember the Pennsylvania section, and the section that you're referring to is much further.
I did 10 miles of that like a year and a half ago.
Right. They call it Rocksylvania. Did you guys know that? In the trail
I understand why they do that.
Yeah. In the Appalachian Trail community, Pennsylvania is known as the state where old boots go to die. I'm serious, because the rock, there is no place you can put your foot. Once you start getting towards Duncannon, from Duncannon all the way to Delaware Water Gap, your feet are screaming. There's just, it's just the geology, it's just, how our state is. So yeah, very rocky.
I have a question.
Yes.
It's a two-parter, actually. So what was your favorite lunch spot in all the places you stopped? And as someone who is very experienced on the trail, what do you bring along with you?
So for a day hike, well, let me answer question number one. I liked having lunch at that, and I actually showed this picture, that little sanctuary. It was, had like the little stone benches and had the little cross with the kind of little altar there. I guess that's what it was. I liked that lunch spot. It was a nice day. I didn't see anybody. I didn't see a lot of people on this trail, actually, unless you were in the populated areas like the county parks or something like that. But in the private properties, I never really saw too many people, but that was a nice quiet space for lunch. Now, what do I bring with me for a day hike? Lunch, water, my ID, camera, or cell phone. Depending on what, like sometimes I might even bring a notebook. An orange vest. Yeah, an orange vest, because of, those mesh vests. I wear orange for two reasons. You go through a lot of game lands, and that is actually protocol when hiking in a game land, especially during hunting season. We always have something orange. And then when I walked on the road, I would put my little vest on so I could be seen. But yeah, that's it. Toilet paper, little baggie. Snacks. Yeah, Does that answer your question? That, I think, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess I got to stop in the sanctuary sometime.
Yeah, yes, it was, and like, it was just, you're just walking along and there it is, you know? That was pretty cool. The other place I liked and actually did have lunch here was the Dinosaur Rock. So, there's big stones and I did have lunch at Dinosaur Rock.
Look at that.
And,
All right, folks. Well, it's 7 p.m. Probably you all have to get off to dinner. If you have more questions for Lisa, feel free to email me. I'm going to drop my email in the chat and I will get them to her.
Okay.
If you want to drop yours.
And thank you for coming, everyone. That was very nice.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
Oh,
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
all right, guys. Have a good
Safe
evening.
travels, safe
All right.
journey.
Same to you. Same to you guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.